Hey there, this is Natalie. Since I've been making these videos, a few people have said they think I have a soothing voice. So for this video only, I'm gonna lean right into that with this super smooth late night radio DJ voice and the best funky laid back grooves available royalty free on Kevin MacLeod's website. All of that sweet chilled out funk, none of the copyright infractions. So, what are we going to be discussing to get you through at least 10 minutes of the long night? Well, it would be customary on a late night radio show to talk about love. But this is a ReZero video, so instead, I'm going to talk about suffering and sin. So relax, sit back and enjoy this discussion of whether or not Subaru is or will become the Sin Archbishop of Pride, where I'm going to be taking the super smooth view that he is not. Take care of yourselves though out there in Radioland, because this video will contain talk about events from the whole ReZero web novel, though I'll try to keep it nice and smooth and not spoil any major plot points or overcomplicate things for you sweet anime-only fans out there. So, Subaru and Pride. Why is this such a common theory? Well, there are a few main reasons why Natsuki Subaru might be, or be destined to become, the witch cult's Sin Archbishop of Pride. The first is nice and easy and super relaxing. Petaljuice straight up asks him if he is in the anime, revealing that the witch cult doesn't have an Archbishop of Pride and is waiting for one to join them. There should be 6 archbishops, representing the 7 deadly sins, minus envy, but there are currently only 7 out of 6. You heard that right, listeners. There are 7, because for some reason Gluttony is 3 people. But there's nobody representing Pride at the moment, and that's the cool, smooth fact you need to know tonight. Just as a quick, extra late night fact for anime-only fans, some of you might have thought that sweet white whale was Gluttony. Actually, it was one of the 3 great magical beasts that torment the world of ReZero, created by one of the 7 witches, and a totally different thing to the 3 archbishops of Gluttony, who are among the 7 archbishops of sin, of which there are 6 left after season 1, because Subaru and 2 of the other factions of the 5 royal selection candidates killed one of them. But there are also 2 extra secret sins which don't seem to have archbishops, but also could have them as well for all we know. Try counting all the characters if you can't sleep, and you might not be able to after seeing the second super chill great beast appear in season 2 of the anime. But back to the main flow. Another reason why people believe Subaru might be Pride is that the Sin Archbishops have special powers called authorities. These include Sloth's unseen hand, and one of the Gluttony's ability to eat people's memories and identities, just like the whale, only they're still different. Subaru's Return by Death ability has been suspected to be an authority too, the Authority of Pride, which he got from the Witch of Envy. But let's not dwell on that for now. Most people in the ReZero world only know about the Witch of Envy, and so would assume she provides all the authorities. But as of season 2, we'll all know that there are actually 7 witches, plus the secret 2, one of whom is a warlock, plus also the Witch of Glaciation, because you can never have too many witches, even after the naming convention has run out. Another reason is that Subaru has a star name, his name being the Japanese name for the star cluster known as the Pleiades. This is something the Sin Archbishop Subaru meets later in the story have in common. The Witches of Sin also have astronomy-related names, each sharing their name with bodies in the asteroid belt. I'm not going to go into why I think Subaru's star name has a completely different significance to meaning he's a Sin Archbishop in this video, because I've already got quite a lot to talk about tonight related to the sins, and it also fits in well to another smooth theory video I have planned for later this week, about the character Aldebaran. Hit subscribe and ring that smooth bell if you want to be notified when that video is live for your enjoyment. A fourth reason is that Subaru demonstrates that he is indeed a prideful man on many occasions throughout the series, especially in events we've already seen in Season 1, like when he proclaimed himself to be a knight and the whole world cringed. There's no denying that Subaru does have flaws related to pride, and this makes him seem like a supernatural fit for this sin. But it is this last point, combined with a lot of other stuff, that makes me feel like Subaru is not supposed to be pride at all. Yes, our attention is brought to pride in several ways in Season 1, and I think this is to intentionally make us suspect he is pride. But hey, we're in this story for the long haul of 11 smooth arcs, and I don't think Tappei is letting us relax with a strong hint about what the big reveals are going to be this early on. If we take a step back, Subaru as a whole is no more defined by pride than by a few other sins, at least in ReZero's interpretation of them, and there are certain ways he either overcomes or chooses to embrace these sin-related aspects of his personality. I think the relationship with Subaru and the sins is that rather than having one dominant sin as a defining part of who he is, something he can claim as a key part of his identity like an archbishop or witch, he's supposed to explore each one of them, both by defeating the archbishops and gaining their authorities, and by either accepting or rejecting the way each sin manifests itself in his own sweet way of living. This is how he will gain mastery over each sin and become the Sage. It's pretty widely thought that Subaru is to become a sage like Flugel was, and that all or part of doing this is getting all of the sin authorities. But what makes Subaru a candidate to do this? He's called a sage candidate by witches and by Roswell, and some things we learn in Arc 6 show he has some incredible similarities to Flugel, even smelling like him. Yes, there will be a lot more stuff about what Subaru smells like. Would someone so strongly defined by one dominant sin that they unknowingly are its archbishop be a good candidate to have power over all of the sin authorities? I don't think so, listeners. I also don't think someone who has more virtues than sins to begin with, and so has no cause to explore or confront them like Emilia, would also be able to gain the wisdom of a sage. But sweet, sweet Subaru has strong affinities with several sins, sometimes serving as things he needs to understand and overcome in himself, and sometimes serving as things he needs to accept and embrace as key motivators. I think he has strong ties with 5 sins: greed, pride, sloth, envy, and wrath, and an already fairly healthy relationship with another one, which is lust, given he experiences it, but not indiscriminately for all of the attractive waifus around him. He's never been swayed by any attempts at seduction either, and he's never taken advantage of Emilia, even when the opportunity has been there. But I also think he has no real understanding of the final sin, gluttony. I mean, he wouldn't have turned down the bathful of mayo Rem made for him if he was gluttonous. Each sin in the Christian canon of the deadly sins also has a corresponding virtue, and while for most of the sins, Subaru sometimes exhibits that counterpart virtue, we never really see him exhibiting gluttony, but we do see him exhibiting the opposing virtue of temperance fairly often, in small details like him always refusing that sweet, sweet alcohol, even after finding out he's legally old enough to drink in this world, and even though most other teenage characters do have a drink at times. I don't think it's a coincidence that lust and gluttony are the last witches he meets, with Echidna saying she thinks he won't be able to understand Daphne, the Witch of Gluttony, at all, something he agrees with once he's interacted with her, finding her extremely frustrating to talk to. But then, Gluttony's archbishops are the most personal adversaries Subaru has for quite some time, as he believes defeating them is the key to getting Rem back. Plus, the whale, great rabbit and black snake, created by the Witch of Gluttony, are also major adversaries. Subaru will come to understand at least one of the archbishops of Gluttony very well by the end of Arc 6 too, though I won't spoil how because that wouldn't be very smooth of me. But lust and gluttony aside, of the 5 he does have a closer affinity with, there's not really a reason why pride, or even the corresponding virtue of humility, plays a stronger role in his personality than the others. Although we don't really get to see much of his life before he's isekai'd until a sequence that'll be in season 2, we know a little from what he says about it, and it's very clear that the most defining sin for the old Subaru was not pride, but sloth. As a hikikomori, he didn't go to school, or even socialize with anybody outside of his parents, and lived an unhappy but self-indulgent life of playing games, reading, and watching anime. But hey there, my sweet, sweet listeners in roaring 2020. That way of life is pretty virtuous right now, as we all know. Still, by his own judgment, Subaru considered himself to be wasting his life. While we learn about what caused him to become this way, which anime-onlys will see in season 2 real soon now, so I won't go into it too much, makes it apparent that it's a mixture of hurt pride and an envy of sorts of his father's popularity, which caused him to fear going out and dealing with people, making a life of sloth seem safe. We see Subaru switch to valuing the opposing virtue of diligence so early in the story that doesn't really get cemented in our minds as being so closely repping sloth until that exploration of his past in Arc 4. We even see him realise in one loop in Arc 2, where he opts to stay as a free guest in the mansion rather than becoming a butler and working diligently, that approach stops him from getting as close to people like Rem and Ram, and results in a bust, making him choose to go for the option of working as a butler and studying reading again in the repetition. He rejects his slothful side really early on in the story, and Sloth is also the first Archbishop he defeats, but we know from his past that this is a man who understands the sin of sloth. Envy, such as the envy he displays towards Julius and Reinhard at times, and his constant awareness of how much less powerful he is than almost anyone around him, is a sin he sometimes accepts, because it motivates him to become better, and also sometimes learns to reject, because there's sometimes no sense in wishing he had what someone else does, like the super OP Reinhard or the super smooth Julius, and it only distances him from having sweet, valuable friendships with them. He also learns that even the people he envies the most don't have it easy, and aren't perfect, whether it's Reinhard or his own awesome dad Kenichi. Pride and wrath are also both sins Subaru both accepts and rejects at different times, seeming to be gaining that understanding of when they're valuable to him and when they weaken him. He is forever humbled by his own behaviour when his pride made him embarrass himself in front of the knights and royal candidates, and he learns some fat lessons from the beating Julius gives him about false pride. But he also feels motivated by his pride once he really is Emilia's knight and the man Rem loves, and who other people like Garfield look up to. He also uses his wrath at times to get the courage to fight, but he rejects it sometimes too. For instance, accepting he needs to get help and then defeat the White Whale to save everyone in Arc 3, rather than just acting on his rage and going straight after the witch cult and Betelgeuse. In Arc 5, we see a situation where his wrath would make him prioritise defeating Regulus Cornelius, the Archbishop of Greed, who wants to make Emilia his literal waifu. But he has the presence of mind to prioritise other battles more essential to getting the best outcome for everyone around him. Greed, however, is the sin Subaru embraces the most, and is unlikely to let go of, as it would mean him truly becoming a different person. This may sound like a super weird thing to say if you're anime only, because it's not made clear how greed is interpreted in ReZero in Season 1. If you're thinking of more usual ways greed is worked into fiction, which are usually about greed for material things, wealth or power, then it would be strange to say Subaru cares about any of these things more than the normal amount. Perhaps the only character really shown to have that kind of greed as a defining characteristic so far is Anastasia. And well, she is an innocent Archbishop, though she does have a surprise connection to greed that I won't spoil, though it's discussed in my video about Echidna if you're curious. But greed in ReZero is different. Greed here is simply wanting more of whatever it is you value than you should want. A compulsion to have as much of that thing as you can, all of it even, and perhaps even a sense that you deserve to have it and could never be satisfied with less. The Witch of Greed, Echidna, is greedy for knowledge, and whatever joy she gets from learning new things is never enough to satisfy her and end her quest for more. The Archbishop of Greed, Regulus, who, by the way, is that smooth white-haired guy we see in the Season 2 trailer. Well, he's greedy for waifus, for reasons I won't spoil. So he's completely different in his expression of greed to Echidna, just as most of the Sin Archbishops are very different to the witches of the same sins in both their powers and their expressions of the sin as a concept. Subaru's greed, which is regularly described as greed by Echidna, Subaru himself, and by people who believe he's wrong to have it, like Roswell, is that he wants, strives for, and will only accept outcomes better than he has any right to hope for. He wants to save everyone, rather than accepting what seems possible as all that is possible. If he rejects this way of living, well, he'd stop being the same person and become more like Roswell, willing to sacrifice everything else for the single person he's chosen to save. Instead, Subaru acquires more and more people who it's unacceptable for him to lose in every arc. He does reject certain help from the Witch of Greed, though I won't spoil the circumstances, but this is only because her methods, due to her own greed for knowledge, don't sit well with Subaru's own brand of greed. Maybe at some point in the future of the story, Subaru will have to let go of some of his greed and accept a permanent loss he can't recover from. Though it seems likely that this kind of thing will happen towards the end, some kind of bittersweet sacrifice necessary in a climactic moment. Tappei definitely strikes me as the type of author who likes a bittersweet ending. So while I personally don't have a clear theory on how it will end, I think the part where Subaru can't adhere to his greed anymore will come then, and it will be something that hits hard. So yeah, Subaru is, to me, someone who's supposed to become the master of each of the sins, understanding them truly, knowing how the aspects of them within himself can be used to help him, and how to overcome them if they're hindering him. He acquires authorities throughout the story, but I think these are the functional aspects of him becoming the sage. What truly will qualify him is that wisdom and understanding about himself and others he'll get from confronting and mastering his own sins and virtues, and the corrupt and insane versions of them he encounters in the archbishops he fights. Return by death may be an authority, or it may not, and even if it is one, there's also the possibility that it's the authority of envy, given that I don't see how else he would actually be able to get the authority of envy if it's never had an archbishop. It is implied that there are all 7 out there, and Subaru needs to have all of them to open an important door we see in Arc 6, which has 7 jewels on it, of which 4 light up for Subaru. But actually, it's entirely possible that the door doesn't count how many authorities he has at all, but something else. And this is another misleading thing Tappei's put in there for us. We only know for sure that he has 2 authorities at that point in time, as in things that are definitely confirmed to be authorities, and which Subaru is definitely able to use. And even adding Return by Death to that doesn't explain why there are 4 lights on the door. There sure are a lot of numbers of things to collect or beat in this world. It's possible Subaru lights up 4 jewels because he's already in possession of both pride and envy, I suppose, with one being Return by Death and another being perhaps the resistance he seems to have to some other authorities, like being able to remember people eaten by Gluttony or being able to see the unseen hands. Or it could have something to do with something Echidna might have done to him in Arc 4. It's very hard to know. But with all of this considered, I don't think any of it convinces me that Subaru is Pride, and I'd be really interested to know what you guys think about the various points discussed here. I think Subaru will be the Sage, but he never was or will be an Archbishop. And you know what? I subscribe to a different theory about what the deal is with the missing Archbishop of Pride, which I'll be talking about in a new video very soon. I hope you enjoyed this special, super smooth late night edition of Overthinking ReZero. I'll be doing the next ones normally. This was just a bit of a change for this fairly long talk, and I hope you're feeling nice and relaxed now. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more. I upload ReZero and other anime content regularly, and this is a new channel, so I really need the support. I'm also planning something special and kind of weird for the first modest milestone of 100 subscribers, so smash that subscribe button if you want to help make that happen. Thanks for watching, and I hope to overthink ReZero with you some more soon.